The night belongs to us. We will bathe in their blood and relish their screams.
Hi everybody, I'm Mark White. I'm the former project lead and managing director for Southampton Vampire by Night. In this video, I'm going to be covering venues. So, one of the things that quickly was a stumbling block for us during the project was when we started to look at venues. Now, it might be different in other countries, but over here in the UK, you have venues like the back room of a pub, social club, community hall, or something like that, which are spaces that you can hire relatively cheaply for about between £10 to £50 for a night. And you can get yourself a space that is very much unthemed, with maybe some spare chairs and tables, for an evening. That's what you're going to get for that. Which normally involves, if you want your game to look half decent, quite a bit of set dressing, lugging around all of that set dressing around with you, etc. And that is what I would consider to be, I call it like your parlour LARP style of venue. So, that's the way I played Vampire LARP for years in venues like that, that can hold up to, like say 50 people. That's that kind of venue. Now, we were adamant with this project that we never wanted to use a venue like that, because venues like that don't tell a story. We wanted to use venues that would help tell the story of the game. We wanted people, when they played our game, to feel like they were immersed in our game, immersed in the world. So we didn't want to have to rely on having to set dress everything. We wanted the venue itself to be part of the story. And so, yeah. And then the top end kind of tier is there are locations that you can hire that are... what's the word for it? They're like boarding schools in a way. They are very fancy estate-looking buildings that are steeped in history, that the owners have since sold, and they have become schools for, private schools or wedding venue, and all kinds of things. But these kind of buildings, they normally cost, I would say, £3,000 and upwards for a weekend. And they normally allow for accommodation as well. Now, the problem with these venues are, on the outside, they look absolutely gorgeous. On the inside, it's hit and miss. The ones that I've been at are normally... the main foyer and a couple of the main kind of meeting rooms would be very well themed in that kind of Victorian area kind of thing, but the rest of the rooms would feel very school-like, as in, they have school equipment. So you have to set dress a bit, but the outside of the buildings always looks stunning. Now, I've played at a few of these venues, various LARPs, and they come at a cost, but they are used to LARPers. So this is the other thing. So community halls, pubs, and those style of venues, and some farmer fields and places like that, they are used to the word LARP. And so when you go to book those venues, and there's even community threads that you can go onto which will help you, direct you towards those kind of venues, they're used to you turning around and saying, I want to run a LARP at this venue over this weekend. And they'll be like, yep, these are our rules, etc., and off you go. So, now comes the issue. The venues in between. So we were looking to do things like hire art galleries, local gyms, going to historical buildings within Southampton, like God's House Tower, the Undercrofts. We were looking to do things like there are business centres that, and pubs, which are, there's a pub in Southampton that used to be a church. So it's a pub church. Looks absolutely gorgeous inside. Venues like that. And one of the things that we quickly came across was that nobody had any idea what the hell we were talking about when we said LARP. Oh, museums as well. We were trying to hire out the Aviation Museum in Southampton. So nobody had any idea what we meant when we said LARP. And they also don't often, they normally hire their entire venue out, but they normally do it at quite a high price because it is normally catered towards the venue being used for a wedding party or for a wedding itself or for a function or something that a business is hiring it out. So they're not used to people hiring it on a budget, if that makes sense. It's normally people are hiring it because their budget is whatever their company budget is, if you see what I mean. So that was the venues we were looking at. So first of all, when we walked in there, they had no idea what the LARP was, confused about how we were going to be utilising their space, and more importantly, if there was a bar, how much of the evening or how many drinks would we be buying within that evening. Now, that caused some issues, but one of the questions that came up on multiple times was, are we insured? Now, a lot of LARPs, as I found out, and I was quite surprised by, don't have insurance. So LARP organisers will go to a venue and they won't have any insurance, so they're relying on the building insurance or the person that's providing that space insurance. And the way that it got put across to me was, here in the UK, if two cars come into have an accident and they both have insurance, then the insurance part go between each other and the claim is allocated, etc., etc. But if a car doesn't have insurance, or the driver of that car doesn't have insurance, it can cause issues. And these venues were along that. They were like, you need insurance. We need to know you're covered as well, not just us. And unless they were a party venue, at which case that's different because they have a insurance that kind of covers weddings and stuff, so they can get away, because they wouldn't expect wedding parties to have insurance. So there are certain companies, certain venues that are used to catering, but what if we went to some of the art galleries or the gym that we were going to, or the museum or something like that, they were asking about those questions. Now, do I think that as a LARP you need an insurance? 50-50, depending on what venues you want to go to. We were planning to have an insurance to cover our company and our members of staff. We weren't covering our players, we were covering the staff. So if we were bringing in stuff for set dressing, or we damaged any of the building or anything like that from our members of staff, we were covered and not be held liable in that way. If somebody who was there as our guest caused damages, then that would be down to that individual to deal with that, meaning we wouldn't take responsibility in that regard. I believe that's what our insurance was about. I think we were covering up to 15 people that were that would come under the Southampton Vampire by Night, were covered by our insurance. And so, yeah, that was something that came up that surprised us. But the other thing was how do you talk to an individual about LARP that has no idea about LARP, and you've got to persuade them that the group of people you're bringing into their lovely venue is going to treat it well? So we kind of started the conversations off by trying to reference other games, and that didn't work, because if you reference the other games we were referencing, well, they were fantasy LARPs that took place in fields, so that didn't happen. There were no vampire LARPs that we could reference that were well known, other than the Treaty of Thorns. That video was used a couple of times. So yeah, it was difficult. In the end, we just kind of put it across like it was going to be like improv, a night of improvisation, which is a form of drama acting where you improvise based off of what somebody else has done in front of you, etc. So we kind of went across as, hey, we're going to be having a group of actors in that are going to be using improv. There's going to be some filming, there's going to be some pictures, it's going to be vampire themed. The individuals will be drinking, if that was allowed in their venue. The amount they will be drinking, I said, think of it along the lines of a wedding. The amount of alcohol consumed at a wedding would probably be similar to what would be consumed at the LARP. And then we just went and said that there won't be any vigorous activities or anything like that. And it will all be manned by members of our staff, meaning we will have staff members that will control the player base and will work alongside the venue staff if there was any issues or anything like that. And we're clearly say if there's any safety concerns or rules about the venue, etc. And that was kind of how those conversations went. And we presented them with business cards. We presented them with, our company was registered, so there was an actual, there was something substantial there for them to reference against. And because we had all of these things in place, we started to open the doors. And some of the venues that we were getting the possibility of using were quite interesting, like the Aviation Museum, God's House Tower, and places that were, like the church pub and stuff like that. And we were able to negotiate reasonable rates for them. I think God's House Tower was going to cost us £300 a game. Was the rate that we agreed, which is pretty substantially. It was pretty good considering the amount of venue space we were getting for that, and a bar and various other bits and bobs. So yeah, it was all right, and it meant that we, as a game organisers, would mean that when players came to our games, we were trying to have it so every game was at a different venue. We didn't want our games to be at one venue. We were on purposely trying to look so each game felt really special and different, and the venue itself became part of the theme of the night and part of that kind of party. So yeah, it was interesting. It was also one of the harder parts of the project, trying to get venues. And it's something towards the end of the project when we started to really nail down that, okay, we need to start looking at getting these things booked in advance for the game coming up. I mean, we were close to putting deposits down on places. And I think we had 3 venues secured before the project was canned. And yeah, it's tough. You have to do multiple visits. You got to put your best face on. You got to be professional. You got to be upfront and honest, trying to answer all the questions. And that initial approach to do it in a way where it's professional, I think really helped. Booking a meeting, phoning ahead, booking, setting a time schedule, turning up, being presentable, giving cards over, having documentation with you, having videos ready to demonstrate and showcase what you're trying to do, giving examples of similar things they may understand, like murder mystery evenings and stuff like that, doing your research on the venue, having that insurance in place, little things like that. They all added up. It's like a job interview, because over it's not like with these other venues where they've had all of these conversations with countless other LARPs We were trying to get venues that hadn't been used for LARPing before, and that was difficult. But don't be afraid to do it. Definitely, there is more out there than you'd be. The more places you can play your game, and you'd be surprised about. There's loads. You've just got to do your research. There was one that we didn't would have been. So we have a large orchestra theatre in Southampton that none of my social groups ever been to. But what it is, there's a stage in the middle, and then there's all these stands going up all around it. And it's gorgeous. And you can rent that place quite cheaply. And it reminded me of Bloodlines, at the start of Bloodlines, where your sire gets killed on the stage. Like that, I thought it'd be amazing to have this huge venue filled with only 50, 60 people. It would have looked really cool, because of that kind of how few vampires there actually are, if that makes sense to the populace. But anyway, I think it would have made some really great photos that night. So anyway, yeah, that was another venue we're looking at. But so yeah, hopefully that kind of explains the venue stuff. Do I think that this was in any way a mistake during the project? Not at all. Do your venue, get good venues, and don't be afraid to approach people, and take the advice I've just said tonight. Just be professional when you approach these people. They have no idea what LARP is, and you have to figure out a way of describing it in a way that they can understand. And the second you do that, the second they can link something to it, it's no longer this big scary, what the hell are these people on about? Yeah. So anyway, hopefully you found the video useful, and you've enjoyed it. And I love you all, and I'll see you all again soon. Okay, bye.